In this explainer, we're going to unlock one of the most powerful ideas from Sun Tzu's ancient masterpiece, The Art of War. And it's not just about how you find an opponent's weakness, it's about how you actually create it. Right off the bat, Sun Tzu just flips our whole idea of conflict on its head. We tend to think of victory as this huge, dramatic battle. But for him, that's actually kind of a failure. The real sign of genius, the absolute peak of strategy, is to break your opponent's will so completely that you don't even have to fight. The battle is won before it even starts. And this one idea really reframes the entire book. See, this isn't just a manual for generals on a battlefield. It's a playbook for thinking strategically. Sun Tzu's telling us that real power isn't about having a bigger army or stronger weapons. Nope. It's about outthinking your opponent, making their strengths totally useless. The real fight happens in the mind long before anyone ever takes the field.
Okay, so how do you actually pull that off? How do you win this mental victory? Well, Sun Tzu says it all starts with two core ideas you have to master before you can even think about exploiting a weakness: deception and knowledge. This is probably the most famous line from the whole text, and for good reason. It's the engine that drives pretty much every other strategy. But deception here isn't just, lying. It's about becoming the architect of your opponent's reality. You control what they see, what they believe, what they expect, and you guide them step by step into a trap that they basically built for themselves. And look at how practical this is. Sun Tzu gives us very specific instructions. Look weak when you're actually strong. Look like you're just sitting still when you're actually on the move. The whole point is to create this thick fog of war, this cloud of confusion that makes your opponent totally misjudge you. You actually want to feed their arrogance, because that arrogance, that's the crack that eventually becomes the weakness you can break wide open. But here's the thing. Deception is totally useless without its other half, knowledge. It's like Sun Tzu's other famous line says, if you know the enemy and know yourself, you need not fear the result of 100 battles. Knowing yourself, your own limits, your own strengths, that's how you build a defense that can't be broken. But knowing your enemy, their habits, their fears, their weak spots, that's what gives you the power to actually attack. You absolutely cannot have one without the other. So once you have that foundation of deception and knowledge, we can get to the real heart of Sun Tzu's strategy, the art of weakness. And this is where it gets really, really cool, because it stops being about just finding a weakness and starts being about actively creating one. And this definition is so important. For Sun Tzu, a weak point isn't about having fewer soldiers or worse gear. A weak point is a condition of unpreparedness. It's a state of mind or a bad position. Think about it. An army can be huge, but if its morale is shot, it's weak. A fortress can look unbeatable, but if its supply lines are exposed, it's weak. And here's the punchline. Because weakness is just a condition, it's something you can influence. It's something you can cause.
So that brings us to the big tactical question, right? If a weak point is just a state of being unprepared, how in the world do you force your opponent into that state? And here's his answer straight from the source. You create weakness by making your opponent react to you. You threaten something they can't afford to lose, something they have to defend. By showing up quickly where they least expect you, you force them to scramble. Suddenly, their forces are stretched thin, their focus is split, and their original plan is in the trash. And in that chaos, they're unprepared. They're weak.
See what you're doing here? You're basically flipping the whole dynamic of control. By forcing them to defend, you get to decide where they go and what they do. You've made them predictable. But they have absolutely no idea what you're going to do next. You're imposing your will on them. And that, right there, is the ultimate strategic upper hand.
Okay, but what about the obvious problem? What if you're up against someone who just seems solid, disciplined, strong, with no obvious weak spots? Do you just wait for them to mess up? Sun Tzu's answer to that is a hard no. You don't wait, and you definitely don't play their game. A master strategist creates the conditions for victory. You don't just smash into their strength head-on. That's a fool's game. Instead, you create a brand new problem for them to solve, one that makes their strength totally irrelevant. You change the rules so they have to play on your terms. And this is the brilliant outcome of all that. You use deception, you use unpredictable movements, and you create so much uncertainty that your opponent is just paralyzed. They're forced to try and defend everything at once. And, well, an army that has to defend everywhere is truly strong nowhere. But this stuff isn't just a grab bag of clever tricks. It's all part of a much deeper philosophy about the nature of conflict itself. And Sun Tzu has this
beautiful metaphor for it. He says your strategy should be like water. This is the tactical expression of that philosophy. Just think about how water moves. It doesn't crash head-on into a big rock. It flows around it. A smart strategist does the same thing. You avoid the enemy's strong points. Why would you waste your energy trying to break through their toughest defense when you can just flow around it and hit them where they're totally exposed? And here's the beautiful why behind it. Water is so powerful precisely because it has no fixed shape. It adapts to whatever container it's in. Sun Tzu says your strategy has to be just like that. Because the conditions of any conflict are always shifting, a rigid, set-in-stone plan is basically a recipe for disaster. And that idea just brings it all together, doesn't it? The goal isn't to come up with one single perfect plan. The goal is to be constantly responsive. You're adapting your moves to the enemy and the situation as it happens, always looking for that path of least resistance, the path that flows, just like water, straight to your opponent's weakest point. When you think about it like that, it's pretty easy to see why these ideas are still so powerful 2,500 years later. They aren't just about war. They're about how to handle any competitive situation you can think of, from an ancient battlefield to a modern boardroom. I mean, look how easily these principles translate. Attacking the undefended isn't just about supply lines anymore. Today, that's a startup targeting a niche market that the big companies have ignored. Imposing your will isn't just choosing a battlefield. It's you in a negotiation, setting the agenda and framing the conversation. And seizing what they hold dear? That could be threatening their capital city, sure, but it could also be launching a new product that completely disrupts your rival's biggest source of income. The thinking is exactly the same. So I'll leave you with a question to take with you. The next time you face a challenge, at work, in a negotiation, anywhere in your life, try to stop focusing on where your opponent seems strong. Instead, ask yourself, where are they unprepared? Where is the undefended point? And how can you, just like water, flow directly toward it?